Good morning, participants. We are going to start our first session of this day, technical session. It is on introduction to cybersecurity and need for cybersecurity. It will be taken by Sri Ashok Bandyopadhyay, Associate Director, CDAC Kolkata. He is heading the ISC activity of CDAC Kolkata. He is working in the area of information security, cybersecurity for around many years. He is expertise in biometrics and IR imaging analysis. I request Ashok sir to take the proceeding and share his screen and start the session, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Anupam. Let us start. I just give me a few seconds and share the screen. Yeah, is my screen available?
Yes, sir, it is available.
It is changing also, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, once again, it is my pleasure that we can share our thoughts here. And already Mr. Murthy has briefed you about the initial part of these codes and what are the contents. So this is my just my humble proceedings that where I would like to share the thoughts on introducing you with the cybersecurity and the need for cybersecurity I would like to discuss on. Now, as you can see, yeah. So why, like, we will talk about the computer security, why it is important. Just a simple statement in the just a common says a computer security, it allows the city of Albuquerque to to carry out its problems and solutions through enabling the staffs to carry out their jobs, decreases the threat of current and future vulnerabilities, supporting critical business processes, and protecting personal and sensitive information. So let's start with that. Why do I need to know about cybersecurity? So you can see that normally about 10% of the security safeguards are technical in nature. First of all, I would like to make you that feel that it encompasses the other part of the activity as well. In terms of technicalities, if we say firewall and intrusion detection devices are a few devices which can help prevent approximately about 10% of its security threats. So the next additional 90% of safeguards are rely on us, like human being. By understanding and additionally taking the safeguards, we can reduce or eliminate most cybersecurity threats. So examples like if you see looking at your card notes, which is basically lock. If you lock it, you are saving your things, like you are taking guard of it, which is 10% of the actual problem. But by making sure that nothing valuable is left in your seat or windows are rolled up or something, parking in a safe area, that takes care of the rest part, like the 90% of the thing. So we need to, what is the essence of it? We have to understand what is the requirement for knowing this cybersecurity, means the awareness, first of all, that is important. So in terms of cybersecurity, the first thing which comes in mind is the three parameters: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. As we see, like, that confidentiality is definitely, we are very much accustomed with it, ensuring that your information remains confidential, and only those who should get that access that information can be are allowed. Integrity, knowing that no one has been able to change your information, so you can depend on its accuracy, which is basically the information integrity. Here we are talking about the information integrity. Then availability, of course, making sure that your information is available when you require it, by making it backup copies, and if required, like storing the backup copies offsite as well. So what is the essence of it? What does it mean to us? It means that everyone who uses a computer or mobile device need to understand how to keep their computer device and data secure. So information technology security is everyone's responsibility. It is not only the people who are handling the technicalities of it. Now, if we just little bit go into deeper of the problem, what is security? In general, security is the quality or state of being secure to be free from attacks. So we can say that basically protection against the adversaries, and obviously from those who can do harm, maybe intentionally or unintentionally, as the case may be. National point of view, if you say in terms of organizational point of view, I will come a little bit more detail later. The issues would be multi-layered systems which protects the sovereignty of an organization or state or a country as well, and its assets, its resources, and most importantly, its people. Now, I have arranged this particular talk in terms of as introduction to cybersecurity and then the need of security. So before going deep into the cybersecurity issues, would like to see what is the need part. So need of security is basically we have some sort of, we have to keep some primary mission that an information security program is to ensure that systems and contents remain the same. First of all, that is very important. Hundreds of thousands rupees and thousands of man hours are very crucial. So that is the important part of it. Why should we go for the security? Attacks on information systems are a daily occurrence these days. We are very much accustomed. We are seeing all this. Organizations must understand about the need of security, where you have some systems, you have basically the information. We'll talk in detail about the systems requirement and information systems as well. Now, if we talk about the business needs, then what exactly by that, what we mean? Essentially, for an organization, business needs are the first and primary part. So information security performs 4 important functions for an organization, like protecting the organization's ability to function, enabling the safe operations of applications running on the organization's IT systems, protecting the data organization collects and uses, then safeguarding the organization's technology assets. These are the major 4 part what we need to see in terms of the business needs. So if we start going a little bit more detail about the first part, that is the protection of functionality of organization. How do you do that? Like, you know, that the responsibility of implementing any information security system is definitely lies with the general management as well as IT management of an organization, which can protect the organization's ability to function smoothly. Many business and government managers, they shy away from addressing the information security. The reason behind is they perceive it to be a technically complex task. That is one important problem. Now, managing information security has more to do with the policy and its enforcement than the technology of its implementation. Anyway, this particular lecture do not have the scope for going into that detail, but in due course, in the next few days, there will be lectures given on that side also. So you will be enlightened in detail about that particular aspect, where the policy and enforcement is very much crucial and how that can be enforced. Many think a solution to a technology problem is more technology, which is not necessarily correct. So what we can do, like we can enable the safe operations of applications. So today's organizations where we have some immense pressure, like to acquire and operate integrated, efficient and capable applications. We should see that we are to create some environment that can safeguard these kind of applications. Organizations are having multiple kinds of applications developed by their own or maybe utilized, procured from somewhere else, but it is required for the functioning of the organization. So then what we have to see that those things which are very much crucial, that the infrastructure operating system platform, electronic mail, as we know, it's very essential these days. Without that, we cannot even think of. And instant messaging also another kind of situations. These are the basic applications where we need to safeguard them. Organizations acquire these elements from a service provider or they can build their own. That, as I already have mentioned. So organizations must continue to oversee these activities. It is a continuous 24/7 process. Now, then comes the requirement for protection of data, what we collect and we use normally. Without the data, an organization loses its record of transactions and or its ability to deliver value of its customers. Modern context of connected and responsive services relies on some information systems. So how to do that? How can we protect the data? Where data may be in motion, like moving data, means variable data, and data at rest. Both are important. We have to protect both of them. The motivation for data stealing should also be stopped. Like we have to take guard of that particular aspect. Now, how we can actually safeguard the technology assets in an organization? For that, organization must employ secure infrastructure services appropriate to the size and scope of the enterprise. It can use the digital certificate to ensure the confidentiality of internet communications and transactions. And obviously, it has to accommodate the changing needs during the course of the journey of an organization, running the organization smoothly. Robust technology solutions should also replace the security program of an organization which is possibly outgrown. Now, as we have discussed basically what is the requirement of security in terms of business perspective of an organization. Now, if we talk about cybersecurity need in terms as a person, so we have to address both. Like at our home, we are also under threat. Certain situations we do not know when something can happen. For that awareness is also very much required. So we see that desktop, mobile, and personal devices are very common these days. Everybody is using it. You have the to run it and continuity of it. You require the internet. For that, you need broadband services, maybe Wi-Fi services as well. Sometimes whatever is convenient these days. Financial frauds may be one of the crucial problem. Yes, there are certain other things like phishing, financial scam, abuse through emails, social networking sites, mobile device threats, laptop and mobile theft, identity theft, email hacking, social engineering, and misuse information, so on and so forth. So these are certain things which as a person one has to take care. Be alert on these particular issues. Now, as an organization, if we see that cybersecurity, if you talk about in terms of an organization, what is the requirement? Like what are the parameters? What are the things that we need to take care of? Like the situations can happen, like your information may be at stake. Information stealing, as I have already mentioned earlier. So we need to be careful on that. Website intrusion or defacement. Domain stalking. In terms of the particular domain, you may have to be very much careful about that particular aspects as well. You have malicious code, scanning and probing. You have denial of service or distributed denial of service attacks, targeted attacks. You can have the situations for phishing, data theft, insider threats, financial frauds, critical infrastructure. It's very important for an organization. So overall, the organizational information. So these are the aspects which one has to look into, and in terms of securing a particular organization. Now, if we go to the broader perspective, like if we see that the national perspective, what are the things that are possibly vulnerable? We may have to be very much vigilant on these particular aspects, like cyber warfare, then cyber terrorism as a whole. In terms of a nation can be affected by that. Attacks on critical infrastructure like defense sector and something like that, ISRO, DRDO, and maybe your power plants, and then your steel plants, your dams, and which are very crucial infrastructure of a nation. So that also has to be secure. Web defacement, web intrusion, malware propagation, scanning and probing, and obviously, as I mentioned earlier also, DOS and DDoS attacks. Cyber espionage is also another important area to take guard. So if we just try to see that what is basically cybersecurity a little bit more definitive way, if we discuss, It is the practice of defending the computers, servers, mobile devices, electronic systems, networks, and data from malicious attacks. So it is also known as the information technology security, or we can say electronic information security as a definition. So application security, which can focus on keeping the software and devices free of cyber threats. If I give you a small exercise here, I think it may be interesting for you as well, like how to define the cyber security. Just go to the internet, see about certain definitions available where you can adopt for finding some cyber security definitions. Now you map with yourself, map with your organization requirements. Now you just think, can we consider or make further update the defined statement as the draft version of vision or mission statement already existing for each and every organization as part of your organization cybersecurity policy? Can we include? So that can be an interesting part of the exercise possibly. So you can just think about it. This is very crucial for an organization to adopt. Now, a successful organization should have multiple layers of security in place to protect its operations. Maybe physical security, personal, operations, communications, network security is very crucial, as well as information security. Now, there was a slight misnomer as cybersecurity and information security. People may get confused. We should not use it interchangeably, because you see that cybersecurity is meant to protect the attacks in cyberspace, such as data, storage sources, devices, so and so forth. In contrast, if we talk in terms of the information security, it is intended to protect data from any form of threat, regardless of being analog or digital. So it is focusing on the information part of it. You can see that possibly it comes under that CIA, the overall gamut of information security. And in fact, you can just get a comparison kind of thing scenario where you have the computer, the data security part, you have the information security management and network security combining. So all this is basically giving you the information security. So this is how we can understand the role of the comparison between the cyber security and the information security in a brief or in a nutshell. Now coming to the details of the information system. So what are the components? So it definitely it is not only the computer hardware. It is the entire set of software, hardware, data, people, procedures, networks, very importantly, which makes it possible the use of information resources, what we really require to go about it. The above 6 critical components, like this, all the 6 components which I have mentioned, enable information to be input, processed, and then give the output. So these 6 has to be we have to keep it in mind, has to be secure all the time. Now a little detail, if we talk those who are maybe a little not in this particular field, for them you can go a little bit more detail if time permits anyway. So if the hardware is the physical technology that houses and executes the firmware and software, it stores, transports the data, and it provides the interfaces for the entry and removal of information from the system. Physical security policies, where it deals with the hardware as a physical asset and with the protection of physical assets from harm or theft. It will protect that. So we can apply the traditional tools for physical security, say lock and key restricts the access to the interaction with the hardware components of an information, where possibly you know that biometric security can be of use, definitely. Software, the software component of the information security comprises of applications, operating systems, assorted command utilities. These are the bottom line where we need to go and focus. Software is perhaps the most difficult information security component to secure, where the exploitations of errors in software programming can lead to a substantial, which actually takes care of the substantial portion of the attacks on information. Basically, loopholes coming from there itself. So software carries the likelihood of information through an organization. We need to be very much careful about that. Then comes your very important part is data. Data stored, processed, and transmitted by a computer must be protected, which is valuable and assets asset possessed by an organization and which is main target of basically intentional attacks. We'll just talk about intentional and unintentional attacks as well. Now, obviously, that relates to the database management. We have to see that the security capabilities, basically, it is enlightened by that. Database management system should be protected using that. Now, over and above the whole thing that people, though often overlooked in computer security considerations, we can see, we must consider in the beginning I have addressed that people have always been a threat to information security. So people can be the weakest link in an organization's information security program. Example, as all are aware of, that great Chinese wall, how it happened because of that only. And these days, you know, social engineering, what is the impact of it? So here people matters. So you have to be in line with that. Procedures. So there are basically, you know, we normally, we can overlook sometimes, like procedures are written instructions for accomplishing a particular task. Now, sometimes it happens when an unauthorized user which can obtain an organization procedure. If somebody can get to know about the detailed procedure of an organization, that can pose a threat to the integrity of information. Maybe it's a consultant to an organization who is not supposed to get all the information how the organization is running. So by chance, if he is getting some sort of information, so there is a possibility or vulnerability comes into play in that particular, through that particular hole, you can say. Network. The IS component that created much of the need is the networking, computer and information security, where the networking is the crucial part of it. Now, there are obviously, you know, LAN, WAN, and internet. I'm not going to the details of that. So everything has to be protected there. Physical technology, which should enable us to network functions, which should be more accessible. And implementation of intrusion systems, that is basically to make the system owners aware of compromises. If something happens, the owner should be immediately should be able to address like that. This information should be available all the time to him. There, basically, you have certain model called PPT model, that is the people process technology model. The architecture where an integrated combination of appliances, systems, and solutions, software alarms, and vulnerability. We can just scan working together. All these things can be scanned. Every time I'm mentioning that monitoring 24/7 is very important. So you have to secure this for people process technology, not for the appliances or the devices. Now, I will just touch upon some aspects of information security concepts. Now, if you say that there are certain number of terms and concepts which are possibly essential for any sort of this kind of program where one need to know the information security concepts, the key points are, the concepts are access, asset attack, control, safeguard, countermeasure. Countermeasure basically is something happens, how to just mitigate that situation. Exploit, exposure. We'll just talk a little bit more detail in next few slides. Loss of your information, loss to the organization as well. Protection profile, security posture, risk, various kinds of risks are there. Subjects and objects. You have threats. Obviously, there are certain threat agents, and most importantly, the vulnerability. Now, the concept wise, if we go a little more detail on access part. So here we see that management service requests with certain user credentials. There are clients, and then you have some kind of intermediary, that is the admin node manager. Example has been given over here. So which checks the user permissions accessing resources in requests, and finally permission, if it is given, then some particular service is enabled. So you see that basically this is how, like, you have to see that object's ability to use, manipulate, and modify or affect another subject or object. So that there lies the requirement, the importance of accessibility. So authorized users have the legal access to the system, whereas hackers will have illegal access to the system. And obviously access control can regulate this particular situation. Now, if we talk about the asset, the organizational resource which is being protected, where asset is basically maybe logical, for example, like website, information or data. It can be physical as well, person, computer system, something like that. And assets and particular information assets that are focuses of security efforts, which need to be attempting to protect. You see that example given over here as the individual, that is the personal use, other part is the organizational part. So where you might be having factory building, plant and machineries, maybe the headquarters, that is the corporate office, etc. So all these are part of the assets. Now, if we talk about the third part, that is the attack part. So there may be situations where something can be damaged or otherwise compromised informations, or some systems can be which can be attacked, which possibly can happen through active mode or passive mode, maybe intentionally or unintentionally. It may be direct or indirect as well. When someone casually reading the sensitive information which is not intended for his use, for his or her use, possibly we can say that is a passive attack. But if the hacker attempting to break into a system, that is intentional attack. Sometimes it may show that, like, you know, a lightning which strikes causes fire to a building, that is definitely an unintentional attack. Just for giving an analogy. A direct attack is a hacker using a personal computer to break into a system. That is a direct attack. Indirect attack, like a hacker compromising a system and using that to attack other systems. For example, like part of a botnet. So there, that can be treated as an indirect attack. But again, that is also equally vulnerable. Exploit, which is a technique used to compromise a system. You see that you have a user here, and then it visits legit sites, and you have, which is basically legitimate sites, and redirected to a bulletproof site here. So this is an exploit kit server. So this can be compromised web server. So vulnerable sites compromises. So this is basically a technique used to compromise a system. Threat agents may attempt to exploit a system or other information assets by using it legally for their personal gain. Or maybe it can be exploited by a documented process which can take advantage of certain vulnerability or exposures, possibly through software which was inherently it was there, or maybe created by certain attacker. Exploit make use of existing software tools or custom-made software components. That is where we need to be very much careful about. Threat part. Category of objects, persons, or other entities that presents a danger to an asset. Threats are always present and can be purposeful or undirected. For example, see that hackers purposefully threaten unprotected information systems, while severe storms incidentally threatens the building and their contents. That's just an analogy. You can just compare these two. Here comes the another part called the vulnerability, which is essentially a weakness or fault in a system or protection mechanism, which can open its attack or damage. So it can damage the system through finding the weakness in or fault in a system. So there are flaws maybe there in the software package, maybe unprotected system port, maybe unlocked door where your system is accessible. So these are the certain things, like there are certain procedures to check these vulnerabilities in terms of physical systems, that is physical infrastructure, as well as software vulnerabilities. Exposure, yes, a condition or state of being exposed, where you have the information security exposure which can exist when a vulnerability known to an attacker is present. So you see that there are threats, assets, and vulnerability combining. Basically, this is the common situation. This is the common part. Is called the risk. So by giving exposure to the outsider world, your system, you are at risk. The probability that something unwanted will happen, that organization must minimize the risk to match their risk appetite, which to quantify the nature of the risk and which organization can take up. In any case, we have to open to the outside world, otherwise we cannot do business. But we have to safeguard ourselves and then open it up. So there is a balance between these two, which is essential. Threat agents, yes, that's what I was just trying to tell you, that threats can come through a kind of specific instances or a component of a threat. Basically, all hackers in the world present a collective threat. While, say, one example has been given where Kevin Mintek, who was convicted for hacking into phone systems, is a special threat agent. So maybe there are situations where we can get there. This figure will give you a kind of flow diagram where some weaknesses has been found to your system, then security controls has been taken over, and impact is functionally it can just stop your activity, which will definitely impact your business. Now, the other parts are like loss. A single instance of an information asset suffering damage or unintended or unauthorized modifications or disclosure. When organization information is stolen, definitely it has to suffer loss. Protection of profile or security postures. Yes, your personal profile and everything has to be protected. So that is also in terms of security program, you have to see that it can be interchangeable. Sometimes your organization failed to implement that. Your education, training, awareness, technology, all these things are going on parallelly. So you have to see that how you can protect your security postures, your profile, and all these things can really lead to a better solution. Subjects and objects. So for example, it as computer can be both as a subject and object of an attack. Example is like when it is compromised by an attack, that is, then it is called object, and if that is used to attack other systems, then it is acting as a subject. Security mechanisms, like where you have to see that it can resolve the vulnerability or improve the security within an organization by controlling the management, basically by taking guard over the management security, operational security, and physical security controls. And obviously we need to give the safeguard to the system, and countermeasure already I have mentioned. Now if we just go to the other part of it, that if the threats towards an organization, how it can be, why it is so important, like as already briefly we have said, it compromises the private data, costly recovery of expenses. Yes, definitely. Weakened the client trust, that is also there. Basically during the course of the business, if something happens to your activity, the client trust will be weakened. Widespread lack of understanding and training, that is the important part of it. We need to give awareness program as well as detailed training program in this. This kind of training what currently we are providing, this will definitely help you in getting into the system and getting into the problem issues, addressing that. Lack of groundwork for the new initiatives. Yes, sometimes we do not have that the proper groundwork, and before that we jump into the new initiative and then fall into a trap. Overwhelmed technical departments. Yes, sometimes the technical departments, they may tell you that everything is, this is very critical, that is very critical, you cannot do this, you need to spend a lot of things. So that also has to be properly judged and act accordingly. So what are the common threats? Organized crime groups for business. Competitors of your business particularly, they may be a threat to you. Through these security systems, they can invade. Hackers, terrorists, foreign governments, obviously for a particular government, the other governments may be a threat as well. Now, just to understand that, there are two basically we can categorize two ways, like external threats versus internal threats. So essentially, we have to see that we need to know the art of war, like which emphasizes the importance of knowing yourself as well as the threats you face. So you should know the information, which information is to be protected, and kind of systems which stores your particular thing, and how to while transporting or moving from one place to the other, and what should be the protection requirement. That also has to be very much careful about that. And definitely the context of information security also varying for different kind of organizations. See that threats to information security, there are certain highlights which compromise categories might be like, say, compromises to intellectual property, where piracy, copyright infringements are there. Software attacks, virus, worms, macros, denial of service, these are part of that. Deviations in quality of samples. You have ISPs, you have WAN services, all these are required to be properly addressed to take care of that. You should see that somebody is trespassing something, unauthorized access, so that, or collecting your data. Forces of nature, like say fire, blood, earthquake, lightning, from there you have to protect. Say for example, if you are developing a data center for your organization, you have to look into that aspects. You have to design your data center in such a way, you have to put the things in such a place that this kind of forces of nature that should not come in between, or it does not affect your total system continuously running. Human error or failure, like accidents, employees which can make mistakes always, so human factor always has to be taken care of. you have information extractions where like say blackmailing things, information disclosure, threatening by giving information to the others. That is also part of that. Maybe some other things like missing inadequate or incomplete information, missing inadequate or incomplete control, deliberate acts of threat, technical hardware failure or errors, technical software failure or errors, technological obsolescence. That is also another, like say outdated technologies. That is also a problem. So these are all part of the threats to the information security. Now, if you see that intellectual property, I was just mentioning that compromises to intellectual property, where basically the ownership of ideas and control over the tangible or virtual representation of the idea is basically the intellectual property. Now, like using up another person's IP, intellectual property may involve or may not involve some payments or some permission or royalty, etc. But at least everybody has to include the proper credit to the source. You have to give proper acknowledgement to that. Whether that is given or not, that also has to be ensured. Intellectual property can be trade secret. It can come under the copyrights, trademarks, and this kind of situations. So there are organizations which can purchase or lease the IP for the other organizations, and they should abide by the certain licensing agreement. So there are no such situations for unlawful use or duplication of software-based intellectual property should be practiced. So like digital watermarks, license agreement, online registration process are part of these situations itself. Now coming to the software attack part, if you see the software flaw or the bugs, here you have some kind of exploitation to the buffer overflow. That is a particular typical part of it. In terms of malware attacks, you have the virus, worms, and macros. Obviously, you see that this is a kind of example has been given, although the figure is not very much clear to you at this stage, but the material will be available. So what is basically a DDoS attack process that has been just briefly given over here. Now, deviations in quality of service, like what basically internet service providers, your UPS irregularities, power problem, communication services, these all come into a particular umbrella. So with the overall gamut of cybersecurity services, which encompasses cybersecurity R&D, you must have some center of excellence. You may have some sort of delivery systems mechanism based on this. So that one has to see that these deviations of quality should not happen. Trespassing, as already I have mentioned, some kind of trespassers, control-led trespassers know that the encroaching or organization cyberspace. We should be able to understand priori, immediately when somebody is trying to do that kind of trespassing. So that is a part of legal, and both situations can happen. Like we have to see that. Force measure already I have mentioned, and human error also I have just talked about. Extraction of information, you can see that one example, cyber extraction statistics. Here you can see that it can be attacker or trusted insider stealing the information. There are cases like say 43% of cyber attacks target the small businesses. So that is a kind of figure in terms of say United States. You see that ranks the highest with 18.2% of attacks. So there are certain figures possibly which can enlighten you to be aware and be vigilant on that. Missing, inadequate, and incomplete controls can lead to like say purely designed or managed situations, make organizations more likely to suffer loss. Basically, why such situations are happening, and gives you a kind of scenario where the organization may suffer loss. Sabotage or vandalism. So here that cyber terrorism is one of the important part of it, and we have to be more careful on having this kind of deliberate sabotage of your system or your business, whatever if the situation comes. Theft is illegal taking of another's property, where it can be of different natures: physical, electronic, intellectual, constant threats. You have some problem, like the crime knowledge not always readily apparent here. We do not know when it sometimes it has happened unknowingly. We react to that situation. Technical hardware failures and errors, obviously that is one important part of it, where the system can be vulnerable, where reasons may be like say technology obsolescence is also one important reason for that. Yes, large quantities of code written, published, and there are systems where you have sold as software with bugs. So that is definitely a software failure possibility you are really giving that opportunity. And patches or sometimes we are getting patches of particular software which is not very strong. That weekly patches also can create trouble. So obviously that technologically we have to be more upgraded. Whenever something comes up, new version has to be given so that we do not face this kind of technological obsolescence. So quickly, if we go for the malicious activities, there are certain things called virus, hoaxes, backdoors, password attack, man-in-the-middle attack, spam, mail bombing, etc. These all will be taken care of in days to come, like in the next few days. There are different speakers, they will speak on this in detail. So hoaxes are like this computer versus cyber hoaxes maybe. So it's a message warning of the recipients of a non-existent computer virus threat. So an example has been given here, which can be of use. One can see that kind of situations. Backdoors can look like normal PHP code or like intentionally, obscured to make code ambiguous and hidden. So that is a kind of backdoor virus impact. You have password cracking things where like it's a very common approach, brute force attack, or which maybe repeatedly somebody can try and guess to take care, just take control over your system, and there definitely your password has to be strong enough. Man-in-the-middle attack basically is a malicious actor which inserts himself or herself into a conversation between the two parties, like impersonates in between. You have some user victim in between, man in the middle. You can just get connected with that and pass on the information, getting connection with the web applications and creating the problem in between. So you have the hackers which inserts themselves between a user and a website. So there are types like MITM where Wi-Fi eavesdropping, email hijacking, IP spoofing. These are certain examples of some situations. You have spam. This definitely everybody is aware of that. I need not have to go into the details. So email spam, etc. is very common. Everybody is looking every day these days. Mail bombing is another type where inbox can be given over large volume of malicious messages to your address. So bombing kind of scenario that really can hang your system. Scamming practice in which the malicious code is installed on a mobile, personal computer or server. Like here, we can see that phishing without a dollar, basically that is one scenario. You see that here the client, and then you have a kind of situation where the DNS server is being attacked by, they inject some sort of fake DNS entry by a particular attacker, and then definitely it requires the results to fake websites. So real websites is being denied and fake websites get into the system. So there are timing attacks like security exploits. They allow an attacker to discover vulnerabilities in the security of a computer or network system by studying how long it takes the system to respond to different inputs, where basically, the cryptography is basically a timing attack in a side channel attack, in which the attacker attempts to compromise the crypto system by analyzing the time taken to execute cryptographic algorithms. There will be lecture sessions on this cryptography as well. So I hope the time is short, so I will have to just quickly go into that. The IS principles I mentioned: the availability, confidentiality, integrity, non-repudiation, and authenticity. These are the principles for information security. So this you can see that this is the critical characteristics of an information, where first you have been interrupted by some man in the middle, and then you see that this is the thing where availability, access the information. Backup, like for that, preventing information resources from being inaccessible when needed. So you should have a backup procedure in your organization. Sometimes if it is intercepted, then confidentiality is very important. So what it does, basically, you have to encrypt, like preventing unauthorized subject from accessing the information. By maintaining that, you can get the confidentiality. And modification, definitely, here integrity is being compromised. For that, to protect, you have to use a kind of technique called hashing, preventing unauthorized subject from modifying the information. That will help you. And obviously, like a kind of situation, somebody is saying, did you get it? He's saying, no, I didn't get it. The other way around, both way it is not happening. So you see that non-repudiation. It is not being assured that someone cannot deny something. So digital signatures essentially is you are preventing the unauthorized subjects from modifying that particular information. Like fabrication is another scenario where authenticity through digital certificates can be basically taken care of. So these are certain principles which possibly can help you, as I have already mentioned. So this is all about, in a nutshell, to introduce you with the cybersecurity system, and as your information security, cybersecurity need, everything can be talked about. Yeah. So thank you very much for listening. And I hope if there is some queries, there is some mechanism to go for that. and there are chat boxes. Even after that also, you can just have your queries posted, or people will be there to help you out. So thank you again for giving this opportunity to start the session. So I hope you have enjoyed this session, and I will request Mr. Anupam Chando to take care of the next session. Over to Anupam. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your session. I hope participants